Hello and welcome to Some Boy Online, where today we're going to be looking at the pros and cons of Mario Golf Super Rush for the Nintendo Switch. So usually when it comes to a new Mario sports game, I can compare it to previous entries in the series. I say sports, I basically mean the spin-offs. Think Mario Kart, Mario Tennis, Mario Party, but I've never actually played a Mario Golf title. Though there was one titled World Tour on the 3DS a few years back, it was released quite late into the console's lifespan, so I just never picked it up. Which means that this game was a completely new experience to me, as opposed to just the next Mario Golf. Although there are many similarities to Mario Tennis Aces, due to the games both being developed by Camelot, and I have put a few hours into this one. Anyway, upon first loading up the game, we're greeted with this stylistic black and white CG intro, which highlights only a particular colour of each character to start, before going into a fully blown 3-minute cutscene. I am familiar with similar cutscenes in earlier titles developed by Camelot, but these seem to have diminished over time. For example, in Mario Tennis Aces, there was sort of an intro, but the CG cutscene lasted for mere seconds, mostly intercut with images of characters and dialogue boxes over gameplay footage, which came across as incredibly lazy. Perhaps even stranger, the game received an update a year after its release, which added an improved intro cutscene. I think if anything, this just shows how rushed the game was, as characters were also added in a similar fashion, to a point where it just felt too late after the game's release. Regardless, my point is, it can't be understated how cool it is to have this really clean looking cutscene in Super Rush, which gives some much needed attention to characters like Wario, Waluigi and Daisy, whilst ultimately giving players a great first impression and conveying the quality of the game to come. Right? Well, if only that were the case. Upon reaching the main menu, you're greeted with this UI design which looks, I want to say outdated, but then again, even older games have creative and nice looking menus, so it's more just lazy. Now, this next thing isn't normally something I'd even pick up on, but when I began navigating the menu, I realised to my horror that it's the same sound effects for Mario Tennis Aces, which, I'm sorry, has some of the most unappealing visuals and sound design, at least in the menus, that I've ever experienced in a game.
Here I go!
I'm not sure if the source from even further back, that could very well be the case. So, Super Rush's menu is accompanied by jarring music that I believe is the main theme. I don't know about anyone else, but even being a huge fan of Nintendo's music, I find this almost painful to listen to. I can't really pick out any memorable motifs, it's just electronic noise that never seems to stop or even slow down. You know, it almost reminds me of some... Oh no. You see, usually with menu music, you have something calm that doesn't distract the audience from what they're doing. Whilst the more bombastic themes are saved for openings, some levels, and the end credits. Super Mario Party has an energetic opening theme which carries into the menu, but for one, this is organic sounding, catchy and memorable overall, whilst all you're required to do is select your character, and there's even calmer themes for later menus in the game. Whereas in Super Rush and Aces, it's just main menu, character select, course select, Yeah, so as far as the music goes, in my opinion, it's the exact opposite of what it should be, but swiftly moving on. As for the character roster, I was surprised a few months back to see the likes of King Bob-omb and Chargin' Chuck, whilst it's nice to see Pauline being cemented as a core Mario character since her appearance in Odyssey. The number of characters is 16, which is identical to the base roster of Aces. And to be honest, that game really excelled in its character variety with the implementation of 14 more characters as monthly DLC. Additional content has already been confirmed for Super Rush in the form of characters and courses, including New Donk City, which is really cool. The only gripe I have is that it feels like something of a downgrade to go from 30 characters back to 16, only to slowly build it up again over the course of probably months. Luma, for example, was my favourite addition to Aces, yet he's not present here, so it just feels like a slight backstep. One character I've been dying to see though is Cappy in his original form from Odyssey. I thought not having him in Aces was such a missed opportunity, especially considering the similar properties of other characters such as Boo and the aforementioned Luma, which he could surely be based around. Focusing on Pauline for a second, I always thought she looked slightly off in Aces, and that's because her proportions were shrunk down to be more Mario-like, as in the older Mario vs Donkey Kong games, as opposed to her taller stature in Odyssey, as the mayor of New Donk City. That's still the case in Super Rush, and though I originally thought this was due to size limitations, characters like King Bob-omb certainly disprove this theory. So even though she looked too tall next to the other characters if fully scaled, it's a shame a further compromise couldn't be made, as I think at the moment she's even smaller than Rosalina. There's also apparent controversy regarding her special move, in which Jump Up Superstar from Odyssey plays, which also happened in Aces, as some fans are displeased that Pauline is now so heavily associated with this song. I did enjoy reading a particular Twitter post in which someone complained that this had ruined Pauline's character, and another user responded, "What were her previous character traits? Gets kidnapped by Monka?" Anyway, I think it's cool. Nice to see some Odyssey representation, so moving on. As for the gameplay itself, you've got Standard Golf, Speed Golf and Battle Golf. I probably had the most fun with Battle Golf due to the amount of stuff going on, even though it wasn't necessarily clear what was happening half the time. The game somehow manages to clutter your screen with tutorials on how to play the game, and yet I still find myself confused as to what I'm supposed to be doing. There's a huge bible to every golf term you could possibly want to know in the menu, but this thing is long, man. Like, who in their right mind is going to want to sit and read through this instead of, playing the game? Basically, you tap A once to stop this bar that goes up and down as close to the flag icon as possible, followed by a second one that, when timed correctly, results in a nice shot. However, I've had nice shots that go nowhere near the hole, and then missed shots that went closer, along with times I've apparently overshot, but it actually lands just right, so what's up with that? Graphically speaking, I'm going to be honest, this looks like it could have been on the Wii. Yeah, I mean, yes, it's in HD, but it's just boring and unimpressive. There's not even anything that screams Mario, necessarily, about any of the environments. Though it's always nice to see references such as the Mario 64 penguins in the crowd, please make him a playable character, boost pads / some enemies from 3D World, and finally those little white birds from Odyssey that land on Mario when he's idle. Yeah, they sit on the grass close to the character's starting point. And although you unlock courses the more you play Standard Golf, the game gives you no idea of how you're supposed to unlock them, and there's only a few. So once you've done that, what's the incentive to play the game? Well, there is story mode, so I should probably talk about that. Yeah, so what can I say? This basically looks like Pokemon. Obviously it's in addition to the main gameplay, so I didn't expect much, but it just plays like a wannabe Animal Crossing that unsurprisingly doesn't deliver. And I cannot decide whether this enhances the game in any way or just cheapens the experience further, as it's obviously not going to be a polished Breath of the Wild or Odyssey type of deal. The best way I can think of to describe it is they've half-arsed two aspects of the game in order to make it seem more worth the value. as opposed to concentrating on making one good. So you end up in this weird limbo, and it's just... Believe it or not, there were a few things that I like to see in this mode though, and that's the inclusion of some of the more obscure characters, like Birdo, who's weirdly not playable again, but you can still talk to, much like in Super Mario Party. We get to see some nice enemy varieties like the Blue Koopa from New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, various bros as opposed to just one colour, which at least spruces things up a bit. But that reminds me, we see a pink Yoshi in the story mode at one point, and there's no mention of how we can get this alt. Apparently, you just can't. So they're probably going to stretch random colours of characters out over DLC, like with Aces. Wouldn't it be nice if they just had alts available from the start, or at least unlockable in the base game? Oh, in addition to this, you do a tournament in story mode, and there's a table where all of the other competitors are listed. And it just rhymes off random Mario characters as if they're characters in the game, when they're just not. I mean, right, here we've got the aforementioned Pink Yoshi, Larry, Drybones, Roy, Koopa Trooper, Nabbit, Morton, Lakitu, Shy Guy, Lemmy, Wiggler, Hammerbro, Wendy, Rocky Wrench, Goomba, Spike, Iggy, Fly Guy, Monty Mole, Ludwig, Paragoomba, Sumo Bro, Ninja, Koopa Paratrooper, and Toadette. Bloody hell, that's a lot of characters. Now, wouldn't that be impressive if it was the actual roster? A few more annoyances with story mode include the interactions with NPCs. When you speak to a Toad or Hammerbro, etc., you get a plethora of text boxes telling you what to do, and every single time you press A to continue, the character repeats one of its 2 or 3 old voice lines, and I cannot convey how irritating this is. In a game like Odyssey, a character would likely speak to greet you once, followed by some short text boxes featuring a variety of newly recorded phrases. But here, no, apparently Camelot thought this would be a source of entertainment for people. Hey hey! Hey hey! Mii's are also in story mode and then subsequently unlocked in the main game, which is cool. Though unfortunately they went with the weird new chunky body design as opposed to the original Wii Sports one, but that just seems to be the default nowadays. Anyway, their inclusion is a step in the right direction, but he sounds like a 6-year-old. Could they just not be bothered to make different voice lines for male and female, so we ended up with this? When you complete a match in story mode and upgrade your Mii character, the game always asks if you want to lock in stat changes in an obnoxious text box. Not only does it ask you this every time, but the no option is automatically selected. Why on earth would you not want to save the progress that you've just made? Also, the characters seem to weirdly obsess over sleep in the story mode, which you do by walking to your house, entering the house, walking to your room, entering the room, going over to your bed and pressing A to sleep. What purpose does this serve? Absolutely none. And yet the NPCs are all like, oh, did you sleep well? I hope you've had enough sleep for your game of golf. And it's not even relevant. I just don't... I have to say, I never found Mario Golf a particularly attractive series to revive for the Switch, stacked up against the likes of Mario Strikers, because at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do with golf. And my expectations have pretty much been met. It's not like Mario Kart or even Mario Tennis, where you control exactly what the character is doing. The core gameplay is basically correctly timing some button prompts and hoping for the best. Which, I don't know about you, but that certainly doesn't give me an enormous sense of satisfaction. Overall, I honestly don't know what it is about this game that just doesn't sit right with me. It's undoubtedly an improvement upon the skeleton of a game that Tennis Aces was when it launched, but there's just an ever-growing pile of things in this game that are a tad annoying, and the pile just continues to grow every time I pick it up. I can't help but think these are traits of Camelot as a games company, which is a real shame to say, but I can confidently say that both Aces and Super Rush are the lowest quality Mario titles on the Switch. There's just a level of polish found in the likes of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Super Mario Party that just isn't present in either of these titles. So, my final verdict is... well, the opening cutscene was cool, I guess.